So, I heard it through the grapevine that this is the place for the audition.
Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation. Today we're taking a look at the new and controversial McFarlane Toy Store exclusive Crisis on Infinite Earth Superman to see if it's worth $40 and to check out some head swaps. Starting off with the packaging, and not only is this an extra wide Build-A-Figure box, it's also a gold label. Gold labels are store exclusives, and this one was exclusive to McFarlaneToyStore.com. The Build-A-Figure for this wave is the Monitor, and the wave is Crisis on Infinite Earths. And then on the back we can see the character, a key of the parts that you need, and how to build them. Down here are all the other figures in the wave, including Kid Flash, the Spectre, and if you look all the way at the bottom of the panel, Psycho Pirate. And then here we have old Prune Face himself. This Build-A-Figure window box is pretty boilerplate, and for packaging I'm giving it 5 points. Moving on to presentation, EARTH-2 Superman stands at just over 7¼ inches. To this figure's credit, it's a 100% new sculpt. In terms of his proportions, he sits somewhere between Hush and Action Comics 1000, which makes me happy, and he's just a hair taller. I really appreciate that there aren't any McFarlane'izations like extra lines or seams. There are also some nice fabric tugs that really do make it feel like a human being wearing a costume. In that regard, he makes a nice compliment to Nightfall Batman. We've also got to talk about this cape, which has been perfectly tucked in, and is not only soft goods, but also wired. Flipping it around, and it even has the yellow S on the back. Immediately, you're going to notice how big it is. It's important to remember that this is EARTH-2 Superman based on Crisis on Infinite Earths. That big S cape is just part of the design, as is this unique take on Superman's logo. Additionally, EARTH-2 Superman is depicted as older, and this face sculpt reflects that. So then the question becomes, how well was this executed? Just take a moment to look at the difference in how vibrant the belt is versus the symbol. The paint on this logo is very, very thin, and as a result, it doesn't look yellow so much as it looks kind of brown. But then we also kind of have to comment on how sloppy the belt is. Not only is it sloppy, they didn't even bother painting the back. Given that this figure was $40, this is unacceptable. Same thing with this paint job. This is a nitpick that only applies to mine, but there is this dark blue splotch here, which I'm going to have to figure out what to do with. But it's a real shame because I do genuinely like this new body, and I'm curious to see what they do with him. Looking at things like the cut of the boot, and also the general lack of muscular definition, and I can't help but wonder if we're going to be seeing this as a Christopher Reeve Superman. Of course, I'm going to show you what that looks like in head swaps, but you know what I mean. Just like the classic Superman we looked at recently, the costume is more of a baby blue. I'm really hoping we get a version of this body in this blue, and honestly, I'd also be pretty happy with this blue. Long story short, in terms of sculpting, I'm very happy with what we have from the neck down. Again, sculpting. As for the neck up, I have mixed feelings. This Superman is supposed to be more aged, and well, he definitely looks it. He's got some very deep creases and wrinkles, and I will say that the eyes and mouth have been very nicely painted, and while the hair has been nicely sculpted, I would like to have seen a bit more gray in the temples. I think the issue is that the eyes are too low, which makes the forehead look too big. If you could have just raised those eyes a few centimeters, it really would have balanced out. I don't love this face sculpt, but I don't hate it as much as I've seen other people online. My bigger frustration is the sloppy and incomplete paint job. Combined with the cost and for presentation, I'm giving Superman of EARTH-2 2 points. Moving on to Posability, and this is one category where I'm a lot less conflicted. From the top, and thanks to that dumbbell joint, and Superman can look up this high and this far down. Great amount of tilt and all the way around. Moving down, he can raise his arm over 90 degrees. This is partly due to the fabulously well executed rotator cuff. Moving down the arm, of course, he has bicep swivel, double jointed elbow with a perfect bend, and McFarlane wrists that can swivel and hinge in any direction. Moving to the middle, and as usual, Superman has a diaphragm joint and a dumbbell waist. He can arch back this far, which is great for a flying character, in combination with his neck and cape, and here's the kind of pose you can get him into. Unfortunately, that does highlight the incomplete belt. Also unfortunately, and despite being a new sculpt and a new opportunity to improve, no effort was made to make that hunch forward any better than usual. He does at least have good tilt and twist. Below the half-painted belt, and Superman has the typical McFarlane hips. He's got a great high kick, a perfect split, and a pretty good amount of twist. Traveling down the leg, and we have a double-jointed knee with a nice deep bend, toe articulation, and wonderfully integrated McFarlane ankles that can swivel, hinge, and like McFarlane Toys moving from plastic to wired cloth goods capes, pivot. This brings me to an important question. Should the cape be counted as part of Posability, or should it be counted as part of Playability? Let me know what you think in the comments. While we figure that out, for Posability, I'm giving EARTH-2 Superman 5 points. Moving on to Playability, and EARTH-2 Superman comes with a trading card and a figure stand. If you'd like to read what sets EARTH-2 Superman apart from ours, you can pause here. While I'm here though, see what I mean about the eye placement? Otherwise, Superman comes with a pair of open hands, the arms of the monitor, and that's it. $40, everyone. I'm starting to feel like this is one of Mr. Mitchell-Spitalick's pranks. Of course, Playability is more than complaining about the cost. Strictly speaking, that's for the next category. It's also about how well your figure plays with others. Starting with the Justice League, and first we have Wonder Woman. These two scale a lot better than she does with some of the other Superman figures we've looked at. Next up is the Flash, who is pivotal to Crisis on Infinite Earths. And then here we have Endless Winter Aquaman with the alternate Barry head. Here we have a Hal Jordan by NECA, which is my go-to until the new DC Multiverse 1 arrives. But for that over-designed McFarlane-style Green Lantern, and here we have John Stewart. This brings us to a bevy of Batmans, and specifically to Year 2, which was the first use of cloth goods capes for McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse. I do have to admit the quality of fabric on this Batman is a lot better. For black and gray, and here we have 3 Jokers, which scale really well. And then here we have Page Punchers, Arkham City, which I know some of you use as your basic Batman. Here's a blue and gray version of Hush, which is still a bit on the big side. And then once again, and here we have Nightfall. That said, for a very special Cape Crusader comparison, and here's Batman from EARTH-2. And for the curious customizer who might want to turn this into Christopher Reeve, here we have 1989 Batman. For more of the Superman family, and here we have the Target exclusive Supergirl and the Con-El Superboy. But for some Superman supervillains, and here we have the new Bizarro with the regular Bizarro head. I still haven't gotten around to painting the neck, but the proportions are great. And then for just a few of the heavy hitters, and here we have Lex Luthor and Injustice 2 Brainiac. Lest we forget that EARTH-2 Superman was a founding member of his universe's version of the Justice Society, and here is Alan Scott Green Lantern, the Jay Garrick version of the Flash, and the Platinum version of Hawkman. For a relative scale comparison, here's EARTH-2 Superman with Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man, and as always, here he is with Stealth Iron Man. Not a lot of Kryptonian grade moisturizers, I guess. Now it's time to see how other Superman heads look on this body. First up, and here's Action Comics 1000. Not surprisingly, I love this. It's my favorite McFarlane Superman head sculpt so far. That said, the skin tones are slightly off. Next up is Rebirth. Sculpt-wise, it's the same as Action Comics 1000. The paint job is a bit different though, and not as good of a match. Here we have Hush. It goes without saying that you will need to do some repainting, but if you like the Hush head, the proportions on this are really good. For one I'm sure a lot of you will be curious about, and here's Superboy Prime. I've got kind of mixed thoughts on this one. The skin tones are a good match, but it does sit really high. It's also a bit on the small side. Next up is the Future's End Warworld version. Definitely a bit on the small side and would need to be repainted, but I do feel like there's something there. Also, while we're here, I did get a request to see this head on the classic Superman body. If you're out there watching, I hope this helps. Here we have Action Comics #1. I saw a custom online where somebody did this and turned it into a Max Fleischer Superman, and yeah, I totally see it. Either way, this might be a combination I stick with. For one of the ones I'm the most curious about, and here we have Classic, this is a perfect match. The color and type of plastics are the same, and despite the head being slightly small, I feel like this is what the classic Superman figure should have been. One that I'm sure a lot of you are very curious about is Christopher Reeve by NECA. Unfortunately, I can't do a side-by-side because mine broke. Not gonna lie, this one really hurts. This head sits comically high. I don't know if he should be saving Metropolis or showing Obi-Wan Kenobi the clone army. Either way, it does give us a wonderful window into what a Christopher Reeve Superman could look like on this body. And lastly, another Superman with a cloth goods wired cape, Mezco 112 Collective. It's a bit small and sits a bit too high, but the nice thing about this Mezco set is all the different expressions. The head swap potential is great, and I love the wired cape, but unless you really want an EARTH-2 Superman or plan on getting the whole wave, this figure doesn't have a whole else lot to offer. Again, stressing that this is part of a build-a-wave. For playability, I'm giving EARTH-2 Superman 3 3 points. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price, and oh boy is there a lot to discuss. The Crisis on Infinite Earths wave is a McFarlane Toy Store exclusive and retails for $40 each or $136 for the bundle. The reasons given ranged from it being a limited edition online exclusive to Superman's wired cape, and the justification given was that if you apply the website's 10% off coupon, that makes each figure $25 each. The problem is that's only if you divide by 5. Given the build of figures are $25 each for 4 figures, that's still more money, and also not taking shipping into account. If you only wanted this figure for this new body, take heart. If history is any indicator, you're going to have a lot of repaints using this body, and probably versions you'd rather have anyway. For price, I'm giving this Superman 0 points for a not-so-super total of 3 out of 5. If you like this video, check out one of these. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again real soon, but until then, play nice and have fun.